our fourth one, but we're doing just fine without him. We have Naomi Brockwell, Will Foxley, who doesn't have that staircase behind you today, Will. I'm really sad about that. That was, I know this 3 box is really, really just messing us up. And me, Jen Sanasi. Naomi, I think you have our first story. Take us off to Washington.
All right, let's go see what they're doing now. So apparently Biden has ordered the release of U.S. oil reserves to challenge OPEC. The idea is that the U.S. will release 50 million barrels of crude oil from its strategic reserves. This is at the same time that China, Japan, India, South Korea, and the UK will all do the same in an unprecedented, coordinated attempt to tame prices. I have so much to say about this. This sort of central management and price control drives me batty because it's like people don't look one step ahead of the actions that they're doing and seeing what the effect on the economy will be. But I'm happy to throw it to the group for your initial take. Obviously, I mean, big warning signs right off the bat that as a very big takeaway, it's very clear that the government is now realizing that inflation is an issue. It's such a bad issue that they're digging into oil reserves in an attempt to try to mitigate increased prices there. But Will, I'll throw it to you to start off with.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at the history that was in this Bloomberg piece that the U.S. has issued some of its reserves a few times in the past, most notably back in 2011 during the Arab Spring, where Libya was just kind of chaotic. There's an overthrow dictatorship there. And so the U.S. had to release about 60 million barrels of oil from its strategic reserve to kind of counter that threat in the region and provide price stability in the U.S. Right now, we're not in a war, like in a hot zone right now. You know, there's not something going on in foreign countries, but we are facing issues that are caused by domestic policy in the U.S., and we're having to respond just like we would have to if there was a foreign policy crisis right now. And that's issuing more of these strategic reserves, these oil reserves. It's also interesting that they got some Asian countries and the UK to sign on board with this. China, India, South Korea, and the UK, also Japan, are looking at issuing some of these oil reserves that they have, but it's mostly symbolic. They're not giving a lot compared to what the U.S. is doing. And they're trying to act in concert. The Biden administration is trying to make all these nations act in concert with each other to try to bring some price pressure down a little bit for the average consumer. But so far, markets aren't really looking at this and thinking that's going to work. It's not enough oil, and it really doesn't address the base issue, which is supply from OPEC is not really ramping up at all. Jen, I'll throw it down to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Naomi was saying, that the high price of oil can be attributed to inflation, and that White House press release didn't mention inflation once. I thought I read it incorrectly. I had to do, a find inflation, and it wasn't mentioned once in the press release. So I thought that was really interesting. You know, they are really attributing the high price of oil to supply shortage, which may be true, but they're leaving out all of these other factors in the narrative. I also wanted to point to the plan. So oil companies are going to take possession of the oil and then return it to the reserve later, they say, when prices have eased, but there's no plan to ease those prices. So Naomi, I'm just teeing you up here. Take it away.
Yeah, so there are so many things to cover here. First of all, prices are going up across the board, right? And the US government's response to this is to basically do the same thing with oil that they've done to the money supply. When you dilute the money supply, the value of that goes down. That's what they're doing with oil. They're saying, listen, we'll flood the market with all of this stuff that'll bring the price down across the board. And it's very interesting because the effects of that is that, well, US producers of oil, suddenly they're getting less profit for what they would have otherwise produced. So the immediate effect of this is US oil producers saying, well, maybe we won't produce as much, we're not going to be ramping up production because it's just not profitable for us at lower prices. I mean, it's like a double fold whammy that they're hitting oil producers, because not only is the value of the US dollar going down, but now the value of oil and the value of the US dollar is going down. And it's so it's Band-Aids on Band-Aids. The issue here here is the monetary policy of the United States, of the central bank. And so what they're doing is saying, okay, well, we'll just like target isolated markets and we'll try to put on band-aids by like flooding the market with this good so that the value of it goes down so it's not as expensive for people. So let's look at the effectiveness of this, right? They've got like 1 month's supply of oil in their reserves, which is reserved for a time of crisis. This is not meant to be used to manipulate prices, and they're not meant to be coordinating with other countries to flood market. Like, it's not something that this reserve is set up to do. It's explicitly stated that this is not what it's set up to do. So they have like a month's supply of oil that's now being used in a time that's not a crisis. That's just, the crisis is the US federal government's monetary policy. And also, I mean, if this were a once-off thing, maybe they could affect the price. Maybe they could have this temporary, adjustment in the market. But inflation is an ongoing thing. Prices are going to keep going up, whether you're going to blame it on Saudi Arabia or whether you're going to, understand that prices are going up across the board because the value of the US dollar is going down. This is an ongoing issue. So once they run out of these reserves, there's 1 month of reserves, what are they going to do then? What's the next step here? Because it just seems that they're teeing us up to have a giant crisis here by not addressing the central issue, which is the continuation of the printing of US dollars, right? So what? We're depleting our oil reserves. We'll no longer have them available in a time of crisis. And, we're also just continuing to deflate the US dollar. So it makes no sense. And on top of that, you immediately had Saudi Arabia say, well, if you're going to do this, in order to mitigate these prices and to get the supply back in check, we're not going to go ahead with like increasing production because it doesn't make sense for us to increase production if you just put out a bunch of oil into the market. So we'll decrease it. So the net gain of this is like zero. And you have, US producers. I mean, like if they were going to do any sort of manipulation of the market, you'd think it would be to encourage them to produce more, maybe give incentives. I mean, I hate those sort of things, but like what they're doing right now with just flooding the market seems crazy in the scope of where we think inflation is going. So that's my take on all of this. I do not see this ending well. I do not see the economy in the US going well. If the United States government if Biden is, announcing that they're now attacking oil prices by flooding the market, like that is just sending so many warning signs. Snowden had a tweet the other day that was pretty hilarious. It was like saying, in what scenario is it good that the Federal Reserve is talking about calorie intake and price comparisons? Like it's getting kind of scary, the narrative, if you read between the lines of what's coming out of the government. So that's where I am on all of this. But Will, I'll throw it back to you for final thoughts.
Yeah, just through my work, talk with a lot of oil and natural gas guys, and they are pretty frustrated just from like a talking with them standpoint. Anecdotal, I should say, like that over the years, their sector has been so demonized, but when the rubber hits the road, everyone needs them. And now we're seeing these prices are going up and people are demanding access to energy. Well, for years we've demonized this entire sector of the economy without putting forward solutions that fix the problems. There's things like Tesla out there, but they're still years away from being able to kind of fix the entire energy grid. And now we just have this very centralized market that people are trying to manipulate, like you're saying, Naomi. So pretty frustrating all across the board. But we should move over.
Price controls do not work. Just if there's a takeaway here, look at history. Look at any point in history. Price controls don't work. Yet the US government is like, no, they probably will this time because we'll figure it out. All right, good luck with that.
Change a few things, it's just going to work. We're going to try again.
Just going to work. All right, let's change track. Let's figure out what's going on with Binance, Will.
You should have picked an Ethereum story because we would have had like an awesome segue for gas fees and gas prices here.
I know.
We're talking about Doge instead, which is still
Tesla,
pretty good.
Though, in your last comment. So.
That's true. It's true. So similar. Well, there was a battle in CoinDesk's tweet story, I guess you could say, on this Binance seeks investments from sovereign wealth fund story that came out earlier this morning, where Elon Musk responded to the CoinDesk story, criticizing CZ, Changpeng Zhao, the CEO of Binance, for their failed running of the Dogecoin wallet. So what we saw here in this tweet thread is that Elon Musk kind of nitpicked at CZ for Doge customer support and how the Doge wallet is not allowing payouts of Dogecoin currently just because of some development issues. And CZ shot right back telling him, hey, we have issues, but have you checked out Tesla software? It's not working too great either. So it's pretty hilarious to see like this interchange this morning between these two huge accounts. Basically, the backstory is that Doge has a lot of issues and there's not a lot of developers, but there is a lot of demand to hold the token. And that's been the story all throughout this year as Doge has kind of mooned. Maybe I'm going to throw this one over to you. I don't know if you saw any of this battle in the tweet threads from the CoinDesk account.
Yeah, it's interesting because you hear a lot of that stuff coming out of Binance. I mean, we've talked on the show recently about the major shortage in developers in the space, and people are just trying to attract talent. And there are so many giant operations going on, and they just can't get the developers needed to keep things running smoothly. Binance is definitely one of those places affected, just like everyone is. And it's not just with Dogecoin. I mean, there's different things going on with so ThorChain, for example, the Rune token was initially created on Binance Chain and on the Ethereum chain before they created the native Rune token on ThorChain. And so like the Binance integration, there are a lot of issues around that at the moment because it just seems like there are bunch of people working at Binance who aren't being paid enough and dealing with a whole lot of issues, and it's kind of a bad code base behind it all. And it seems like there's a lot going on there. So I hope that they can figure it out because honestly, Binance provides such a valuable service for the world. And like Binance Chain as well. This is a Ethereum competitor that has helped take some of the pressure away from the Ethereum ecosystem and help people who want to participate in the world of DeFi, but don't necessarily have $5 million to spend on gas fees. And so I hope that they can figure this out. And it makes me wonder, what's going on with some of the other chains as well. It just makes me worried. There's such a massive retraining of the population that needs to happen in order to keep up with the demand in this new DeFi space and this new blockchain crypto world that's been created, because there's so much potential there. But at the end of the day, you need human resources in order to fulfill the promise that blockchain technology and decentralization has. And so it's interesting across the board, just seeing this shortage and not seeing people be able to pull through with the goods. But Jen, I'll throw it to you for your take on all this.
So I may risk sounding like a dummy here, but did I read the story incorrectly? I thought that there was Doge that was incorrectly deposited into 1,600 wallets, and that's why the wallets were frozen. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's been a ton of issues with the Doge development team. I think we saw earlier this year that nodes were being overrun. And now there seems to be an issue with a recent update that pushed some Doge wallets to have incorrect amounts of Doge in them. And the Doge development team for this particular wallet is trying to figure that out. Binance is trying to figure it out. I think the Doge central core team or whatever is also trying to figure it out. It's kind of a hot mess.
So when I read CZ's response, and now that you guys have explained it, I understand that there are many different factors that go into this, but it did sound shady to Elon's defense. I mean, they're saying that the way that they maintain their Doge wallets is different than every other platform, and so why?
Well, Binance is really large, so I think that's something to take into consideration. And then also the Doge team is all over the place, I'd say. There is a core Doge developer team, but it's kind of been reinvigorated over the last few years as there's been interest in Doge. It's not something like Bitcoin Core where you have a set developer team, or the Ethereum Foundation where you have a set team that's kind of working on the processes behind the coin. I think it's very new, and so that might be part of the issue. And then also seems to be a thing between the wallet and Binance itself. So it's hard to say who's in the wrong here or what's actually going on, because again, Binance is a huge corporation. To me, the hilarious thing about this whole story was that we had probably the two wealthiest people in the world nitpicking at each other and tweeting at each other over what amounted to a customer support ticket for a crap coin like Doge. I think that was pretty hilarious. CZ is probably worth about $200 billion, even though people don't really say that, but just between his equity in Binance and his own holdings of crypto. And then Elon, of course, is worth much more than that just based on his holdings in Tesla and other stocks. So like that's the world we're living right now, where we have a CoinDesk story, and in the replies we have Elon and CZ going at each other over customer support, which I think that's like the real headline here.
I think so. But I mean, it also brings up the question, when you're talking about Dogecoin and Elon coming out and reinvigorating it and saying, hey, this is a thing that I'm going to focus on. And it's like, why are you focusing on something that was kind of like on the out? And it's like, okay, so now we're taking resources and we're putting it towards this thing. And it makes me wonder whether there's going to come a time where there is such a shortage in developers that maybe projects start consolidating. Maybe projects and teams start joining forces. I mean, this is what happened during the tech boom. You had famous example, Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, who joined forces to create PayPal. They were like giant rivals who like hated each other, and they were both poised like it was a fight to see who would come out on top. And then there's this crash, and so they met up and they're like, hey, we're not both going to survive. Let's join forces, and PayPal came out of it. And so it's interesting to see what's going to happen in the blockchain space, if there is going to be a downturn there, if there's going to be a global economic crash, like all these kind of things, what ends up happening, and if you start to see teams consolidate, that would be an interesting turn of events there. But let's change track there, and Jen, let's go to NFTs.
All right, let's go on off to NFT land. Okay, so music platform Royal closed a $55 million funding round led by A16Z. Royal, of course, is a music tokenization platform that slices up song royalty rights into crypto tokens that anyone can buy and trade. So we've spoken about this platform on the show months back when they raised their seed round. And this could really change the way that record deals are done. And Naomi, I'm passing this off to you. I know that Taylor Swift is in the middle of re-recording all of her music because she cannot buy her masters back. And while the narrative is not exactly the same as the problems that Royal is trying to solve, it is quite similar. So when you think about artists being able to tokenize royalties, what do you think about?
I think it's awesome. I think it's really great to have that dividend payment be able to go directly back to the creator. Currently, we have this weird system where if you get a distribution deal with a distributor for a film, for example, you kind of negotiate how much you want up front, how much you want to pay dividends on the back end. Certain amount of those dividends, as per like SAG rules, have to go to certain participants in the process. And like, a lot of the time, it's just this very opaque world where it's like, you're never really quite sure. Are you getting the royalties that you are owed from that? Sometimes they withhold and like forever, and you kind of have to go through a battle to actually get them to release funds. There's, there could be added costs where they're like, actually, we need to add more, advertising. And so we're soaking up some of that money and we're spending it on this. And it's like, it could be this very complicated process. So anything that can make that more transparent and like just give direct access, direct payouts to the creator, I think is very interesting. Because previously, we did have these centralized gatekeepers. It was sort of this necessity, economies of scale and, control of the airwaves and control of television stations. Like all of this set the stage for certain big behemoth companies to come in and be these gatekeepers and manage everything. But we have all these distributed technologies. We have all this decentralized tech now where people can get directly in front of audiences and no longer really need these centralized institutions. And I think that moving the payment vehicles towards this decentralized route is the obvious next step, because there's no reason why we need to go through these centralized, payment issuers either. So it's kind of this interesting situation. I mean, the first question that comes up with Royal is like, is the SEC just going to immediately shut this down? Are they going to consider this a security? Because it's like, I mean, a royalty is this contractual obligation to collect revenues based on some sort of future conditions. And, for me, that doesn't seem like it's a security, but the SEC swoops in all the time and it's like, that's obviously a security. Does it have value on a marketplace? It's a security. It's our domain. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they just, swooped in and shut this down. But maybe you have a different take on that, Jen.
I love your impression of the SEC. Alarm bells go off for me when I read this when it comes to the SEC. I think that they're probably watching this closely. For me, it doesn't seem like a security, but who knows? Everything seems to be a security when it comes to the SEC. I recently, though, I wanted to bring up...
Hammer, everything looks like a nail.
I recently interviewed a musician, Matt Sanders, from the band Avenged Sevenfold, for any heavy metal fans out there. And the way he's thinking about this space is quite interesting, and I think a little bit more progressive than many artists are thinking about it right now. I think everyone is coming up with an NFT strategy. He was telling me that he's recently purchased land in the metaverse where fans can come and have exclusive concerts, and he's thinking about things a little bit differently. I took the opportunity to ask him how his peers are thinking about decentralization when it comes to music. And he said a lot of people just think it's not for them, and they're not quite understanding the value in Web3 for music. And I think that this platform very clearly outlines the value in a way that musicians can understand. I think royalties and masters and ownership over music has been a conversation that we've been having for a really, really long time. So I think that this might be the aha moment for musicians, but I'll pass it down to Will for your thoughts.
My thoughts on this subject. NFTs still ripping and rolling, so that's good stuff. I think I agree with both of you on the like the rights around music. I didn't know about the Taylor Swift thing, so that's also news to me. I'm surprised I haven't heard that from Naomi yet.
Do you live under a rock?
If you want a complete history of Taylor Swift and her music, you just let me know, Will, because I am here ready to just reel that off.
This is the perfect opportunity to get Taylor involved in crypto.
Well, that's good. Yeah, maybe we can get her an NFT and get the rights all around that. Seems like good stuff. Yes, Naomi, can you sing us out?
Telling me to sing. I can sing us out. Oh wait, it's 12:22. Okay, we're done.
Wow.
You have to sing a Taylor song. Yeah.
Well, listen. When Taylor comes on the show, we'll do a duet. So Taylor, you
didn't we
NFTs,
bully Paris Hilton off the show or something?
We did, yeah. Me personally. Yeah, so I won't do that to you. Obviously, mega fan. Even have like a cardigan and like a 999 Pro rug. Bunch of stuff. Yeah, not doing a great job. All right, let's wrap this up then, guys. Let's take this out. Tomorrow is Wednesday, and we will be back here on the Hash at 12 as always before going on a Thanksgiving break. So I hope that you guys have all got your turkey and your tofurkey ready for eating.
Macy's NFTs.
Have you guys watched Rick and Morty with that episode where it's like, let's go and celebrate America's birthday or whatever the F Thanksgiving is. I don't know. I just love Rick Sanchez. He's an awesome character. But let's wrap this up. Stick around at 3 p.m. We have all about Bitcoin with Christine Lee. Tomorrow we have First Mover at 9. And in the meantime, go check out the CoinDesk website. You'll find all the latest and greatest in crypto news on there. Check you later. Thank you to everyone for tuning in.